Have you ever gone to the eye doctor and left with more questions than answers? What is this air puff test? Why do you have to dilate my eyes? What do these drops do? What does this glasses prescription really mean? Time to clear some of these things up. The dreaded air puff test. Well, it turns out this one is really important. This test is used to measure the eye pressure, which is one of the really important tests that we do to monitor or to originally diagnose glaucoma. The puff of air flattens the cornea or the surface of the eye, and the amount of pressure that it takes to flatten the cornea is read back to the machine, and that tells how much pressure is in the eye pushing outward, which is what we monitor for glaucoma, the eye pressure. There are a few different ways to measure the eye pressure, but the air puff test is nice because it doesn't require any numbing eye drops and it doesn't touch the eye directly like the other instruments that exist to do the same. How does the eye focus? Well, the cornea is actually responsible for bending the light about 2/3 of the way, and then the light continues to enter the eye and the lens is responsible for bending it the rest of the way. Then the light will cross and flip upside down and it will head towards the back of the retina, which will then see the image that we are looking at. The retina is kind of like the film of the camera and the lens is like, well, the lens of a camera. It's actually able to focus depending on what distance we're looking at. When we're looking at far distance, the light that's coming into the eye is essentially parallel and the lens is at its thinnest state. And this should give a sharp and clear image on the retina, unless you need glasses, of course. We'll talk about what different glasses prescriptions are and why you might need them in just a moment. And then when you're looking at something up close, the lens needs to focus, just like the lens of a camera. So it actually needs to change its shape a little bit. When you're looking at something up close, the light that's coming into the eye is no longer parallel. It's actually coming away from the object and separating. So the eye needs to bend these light rays that much more to focus them on the retina. How this happens is there's a ciliary muscle that is holding the lens in place and it contracts. This allows the ligaments that are holding on to the lens to loosen, which allows the lens to kind of squish down. It increases its curvature and it gets thicker. This allows it to bend light that much more to focus it on the retina in the right place. Can you believe that our eye does this automatically without us having to think about it? If you've ever been told you have astigmatism, you may have been told that your eye is similar to the shape of a football. Can the eye really be shaped like a football? Well, no, the eye is much more spherical in shape and it's never going to be shaped like this. It's kind of a weird way of describing the curvature of the front of the eye or the cornea. We were just talking that the cornea is responsible for bending about 2/3 of the light that goes into the eye. The cornea should be a nice and symmetrical spherical shape like this racquetball here. But if you have astigmatism, there is a slight difference in the curvature in one direction compared to the other. And basically that means that the light is focused more in one direction compared to the other. And this is correctable with glasses or contact lenses. I think they just like to exaggerate it and pretend that the cornea is shaped like this, which is kind of more like a football shape. It's more curved in this direction than this direction. So if you know optics and what's going on with the eye, it kind of makes sense. But if you're just telling someone their eye is shaped like a football because they have astigmatism, this is kind of confusing. So no, your eye isn't actually in your head shaped like a football like this or like this. It's generally a more spherical shape. We're just talking about the surface of the eye or the cornea. So what is the difference between myopia, hyperopia, presbyopia, and astigmatism? Well, we just talked about astigmatism. That is due to the difference in curvature in one direction compared to the other on the cornea or the surface of the eye. And sometimes there can be a different curvature in the lens as well, though the cornea is the most common place to see this differential in curvature. Myopia and hyperopia are a little bit different. In someone with myopia, usually their eye is a little bit longer than what it should be, or the cornea is thicker than it should be. So the light that enters into the eye is focused before it reaches the retina, which is like the film of the camera. If you want a clear, sharp image, you need the light to come together on the retina. If it's coming together before the retina, the image is going to be blurry by the time it reaches the retina. So people with this kind of prescription need a negative glasses prescription that's going to bend the light away and keep it from focusing too early. Hyperopia is the opposite. People with hyperopia generally have a shorter eye or a cornea that is slightly thinner. This means that the power of the eye isn't strong enough to bend the light to have a clear and sharp image on the retina. It actually has a sharp image that lands behind the retina, so the image on the retina is blurry. So they need a plus prescription to bend that light extra so that it hits the retina when it's that clear, sharp image. Presbyopia is different from all of the above in that it affects the way that the eye is able to focus. We were just talking about how the eye focuses. That ciliary muscle contracts, the ligaments loosen, and the lens gets thicker and more curved. But with age, this lens becomes less flexible and the ciliary body loses its strength a little bit to contract. So people then have more difficulty focusing on near objects, and this is when people start to need a bifocal. This usually happens around age 40 or so. If you'd like to learn more about this, I would recommend checking out my video about presbyopia here. Why does squinting help you see better? Well, there are a couple of things going on here, and basically what you're doing is you're creating a pinhole effect. And we talked a little earlier about how the light is focused as it comes into the eye. It's focused by the cornea and the lens, and it is aimed to land on the retina. But if you have hyperopia or myopia, for example, these light rays are not all going to come together at the retina. So if you add a pinhole in the way, it eliminates the peripheral light rays, just leaving the central rays so they're going straight there to the retina, and that image will be much clearer. Now, pinholes aren't a good long-term solution to correct vision because they do limit your peripheral vision and reduce the amount of light coming into the eye, giving us more difficulty seeing, especially at night. So we'll stick with glasses and contacts. Why do eye doctors have to dilate your eyes? Well, this one is super important. If you look at my eye model here, you can see the iris has a really small hole in the center called the pupil, and looking through that small hole to get a view of the retina back here is going to be really difficult. By dilating the eye, we open up this iris muscle to make the pupil as big as we can so that we can look way out to the edge of the retina, all the way to this area that actually lands up against the back of the iris. This is the area that tends to get retinal holes or tears the most because that's the area that tends to thin out the soonest, and catching these holes and treating them can prevent a retinal detachment in the future. And if somebody has a current retinal detachment, we need to be able to see it, locate it, refer them to the proper care provider. And there are so many other things going on in the retina that we need to evaluate that dilating the pupil gives us a much better view of. So this is a very important part of a comprehensive eye exam. I hope you learned something today. Comment below if you have any other questions you'd like me to answer in a future video. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to see you next time.